Hi, and welcome to the Agile Talks. Today I am very excited because we will discuss with Jeff Sutherland, and who is the co-creator of Scrum. And today the format will be a bit different from the others because there is no slides, there is no presentation. Directly we will discuss about some questions and try to answer them. And let's learn together and let's invite Jeff. Welcome, Jeff.
Hello, thanks for having me today.
Thank you to accept my invitation. And I want to skip the first question, easiest questions. Who is Jeff? Because I think everybody knows you. We have two sections in this webinar. In the first section, we will talk about Agile Manifesto and Scrum. In the second section, we will talk about Scrum Scale. And if you are ready, let's start with the first section.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, the questions is coming. As you know, also you are the one of that guys. In 2001, the Agile Manifesto was written, you and your friends. And as I know, it was written for the software world. So is the first question, what would you do differently if you wanted to change it? Because as you know, a lot of business company, also the business teams is trying to follow Agile, also Agile Manifesto.
Well, when I founded Scrum Inc. in 2006, one of the primary reasons was to take Scrum out of software and get it into all business. And what I did at the time in talking about the Agile Manifesto, I only had to change one word. There's a word software in the second value of the Agile Manifesto, and I changed that to product. And today I talk about product and services because it doesn't matter what you're doing. Right now I'm launching a healthcare startup. I'm working with nurses and clinicians. They're not doing any software, they're treating patients. And so that service is part of the second value in the Agile Manifesto. We value delivering working services, in this case, higher patient health, over extensive documentation. And we've significantly reduced the amount of documentation we need to do. And we've increased the number of patients we can treat per week using Scrum by 500%. That is a huge impact on the financial viability of a healthcare organization, right? So we're not into it to make money. We're into it to treat patients. And if we can treat 500% more of them for the same cost, we generate more health. That's Agile, right? That's called delivering working services is way more important than talking about it or writing about it.
Oh, that's great answer. Let's continue with the second question. It's a bit connected with the first question. If you had a chance to add fifth value in Agile Manifesto, what can it be? I think a lot of people are discussing about that question, and they are asking when will they add new value in Manifesto. So what's your perspective and answer?
Well, we were asked this question in 2011, the big Agile conference, annual Agile conference in the United States. They invited all the authors of Manifesto. And one evening we had a discussion like this on the Manifesto. We had thousands of people in the room and they asked this question. And we first made it clear no one of us really wants to change the Manifesto. It's a historical document. It stands as it is. But Ron Jeffrey said, I would put a comment at the bottom of the Manifesto. And the comment is, value number 2, delivering working product over extensive documentation, we really mean that, delivering working product. If you can't deliver working product and services early and often, you are not agile. And some people don't seem to realize that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's a bit about so did you change your perspective to project to product, because you are saying to product? So in Agile Manifesto, as I know, a lot of project work we can see, but now to work with product and service and to go faster, I think the key point. Is it right?
So this brings up another question. This is all about the mindset. So there are still people stuck on projects, but the Gartner group, the leading analyst group in the world, I think, 20 years ago, it said you need to move all your projects to a product orientation.
Mm-hmm.
That was 20 years ago. So if people are stuck on projects, then they're 20 years in the past, and that is not going to work out well for them to be able to compete in the modern world, okay? We need to move to a product orientation.
That's a great point. So let's change the question. If we talk about the project, so project manager role was very popular in also its role. The role is changed, but a lot of project manager is still continue to follow to complete that projects in scope, on time, on budget, and they are following to outputs, not directly outcomes. So the project is completing, the team directly disrupting, and the new project teams is creating involved. So if we change our perspective to product based, to change product and service based, so project manager role needs to be changed. So how can we change this traditional project manager role in Scrum or Agile world?
Okay, so in 1993, when I built the first Scrum team, and then in 1995, when Ken Schwaber and I wrote the first paper, we eliminated the project manager. There is no project manager in a Scrum organization. So how does that play out? So a while back, I was working with Comcast, which is one of the biggest internet companies in the United States, maybe the biggest. And they were transforming a division to Scrum, the division that builds all of the set-top boxes for the televisions. And the chief operating officer of the division had decided they had to go to Scrum because they could not compete by doing traditional project management. They were losing business. The quality of the product was not good enough. So survival, I mean, people do Agile because they need to survive in a competitive business environment. So he had me come in and work with him. And the first question was, what do we do with the project managers? And I said, well, after we described how Scrum worked, he said, we need to remove the title of project manager from the company. We will have no managers. Now, what will we do with the current project managers? So we went through all of them, and we found that many of them were committed to certain customers. So it was natural for them to be a product owner for a customer or a set of customers. There was a small set of project leaders who were more technical and team oriented, and they would make a natural Scrum Master. Then the question was, okay, we have 2/3 of the product owners, but we only have 1/3 of the Scrum Masters. So we need to hire a lot more people. Or, if we want to keep the same number of developers, we need to hire 30% more Scrum product owners, and we need to hire 66% more Scrum Masters. which is what we did.
So the product owners is full-time job or part-time? Because the other question is about this, but let's park this question. I want to ask one question about the project manager role. If the company still continue to follow project-based working, so do we need to change their role, or do they need to change their perspective to project to product?
Okay, so there are many companies where I go into the company. I remember there was one team at one of the leading consultancies in the world. I won't mention their name, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I was brought in to actually assess their Scrum implementation. And they had a manager,
Mm-hmm.
a project leader, a Scrum master, and 3 developers. What's your biggest customer problem? They said, our biggest problem is we're billing the customer for all the hours for all these people, and they're not getting hardly any stuff built. I said, well, you need to stop billing for the project leader is conflicting with the role of the Scrum Master and actually causing the team to slow down. Plus, that leader that you're billing should be a developer working on the team, so you can actually build more stuff, right? Which is what the customer wants. And the manager's role, you do not need a full-time manager for a Scrum team. That's not the way the system works. So if you're going to be successful in a consultancy, you're not going to get away with billing all those hours. There are going to be companies come in with teams, real Scrum teams, and they're going to come in at half of your price, and they're going to build a better quality product. So you need to change the way you think about what you're doing.
I think that's a great point. So let's continue with the other question about roles. Product owner role. In my experience, a lot of company changing some business analyst roles, or in the business side, some manager role, changing directly to product owner role. But they are currently still doing their X work. So they can be overloaded. The product owner role directly can be overloaded. So in this case, and also the other problems about the product owner role, if you change the business analyst role to product owner role, if they don't know the customers, they don't know the systems, so they directly to fail about to be customer oriented.
Okay, so again, this is the way you think about this is going to cause you to fail or be successful. If you take a business, there was a analyst group that's a while back, they published a study on what are the biggest failures in Scrum. And the number one failure was a business analyst as product owner. Now, why does that cause failure? Because the business analyst wants to write a big specification. And a business analyst is not responsible for revenue. So they don't have the mindset to be a product owner. It's not that they can't be a product owner, but they have to change completely the way they think about the business. And they need to be measured by the revenue they deliver per point that the team delivers. So they realize that they are primarily accountable for revenue. And then they need to figure out how to get the most revenue for the least amount of specification, which we call an Agile specification.
Also, the other perspective, if you put some management roles to product owner role, they can be overloaded. What do you think about that part? And they are saying,
well,
with part-time role. So is it used?
At SAP, they decided that when SAP had a big failure, they tried to build a new product and they spent about €500 million, and they couldn't sell the product. It was a huge failure. And they said, the reason we have this failure, we're doing Scrum, is we have too many managers and we have a product problem. So they said, we're going to take 2/3 of the managers and we're going to train them to be product owners. And they're going to have no more accountability for developers other than telling them what they need to build. And we're going to take 1/3 of the managers who are really good at people, and we're going to give each one of them 100 developers to hire, train, motivate, but no day-to-day management. So that's what one of the biggest and most successful companies in the world did to solve this problem, right? What do you do with all these managers when what you really need is product owners to compete?
That's a great point. So my question, I'm changing to my questions about the roles, from roles to agile transformation perspective. As you know, the success of agile transformations is seriously low. What do you attribute this to?
Yeah, we know from a recent survey done at Forbes that 53% of agile transformations fail to deliver. And I read a report from one of the big consultancies today that said only 30% of them they think are successful. And we've done extensive analysis. I work with hundreds of trainers all over the world. And I'm working in training all these trainers and supporting them as they go out and do their consultancy and their training. And we have repeatedly done Toyota A3 analysis of this problem. And the answers consistently come up to two primary things. One is the Scrum itself is not implemented properly. So for example, in our Rocket Mortgage case study, Rocket Mortgage is the biggest mortgage company in the United States, maybe the world. And they had been doing SAFe for almost a decade, and it was a successful SAFe, but not fast enough. So when we started to implement Scrum at scale, we found that there were 15 different job descriptions on a team. We said Scrum only has 3 job descriptions. We cut them to 3. And we said, okay, if you're a business analyst, you're now either a developer, or maybe we're going to totally retrain you and you're going to become a product owner, but there are no business analyst titles. If you're a user interface person, you're going to learn to be cross-functional. You're not just going to be doing user interface. If not, you're going to be moved to another part of the company. Now, Scrum Masters are responsible for improving the performance of the team. We're going to measure that performance, and Scrum Masters that cannot deliver increases in performance will be moved to another job. Second, product owners are responsible for increasing revenue per point of delivery from the team. And some product owners are really good at that, some are not. The product owners that are not good at that are going to be moved into another position. So we only have cross-functional developers, we only have Scrum Masters that can improve teams, and we only have product owners that can deliver more revenue.
My question go on.
This made the SAFe go 400%.
That's a great point. But I have a question about your experience, in that experience. In SAFe world, there is different type of roles, as you said, epic owner, business owner, and still mid-level management stay in company. But if you want to remove it, as you said, fits in 3 different roles: Scrum Master, Product Owner, and developers. Is it bring some resistance for that roles?
Is there some resistance?
Yeah, exactly.
There is always resistance to change. And in fact, typically when we go into companies, I remember I saw this in one of the GE divisions. I told the management, I said, clearly from having these people in the training, a third of your people, and these were managers in the training that I did, a third of your managers do not want to change. A third of them are going to go along with the senior leadership. And a third of them really want to get better. They want to change. But unless you as a leadership team deal with a third of the managers that don't want to change, and also a third of the people on the teams that don't want to change, you're not going to be successful. So what is your plan for doing that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's a great topic.
That's called being an agile leader, having a plan to solve that problem. And there are many approaches to do that. With the most successful ones, there are certain organizations, particularly in oil companies, for example. I've been really surprised. We have many different oil companies, some of the biggest in the world, that do Scrum at scale. And they have been more successful than the IT firms. And because they tend to appoint a chief executive as the chief product owner. And what they do is they implement Scrum at scale properly. They start small. They get teams getting twice the work done in half the time. And then they use that as a model to the rest of their organization. They say, okay, here now we have a running operation. We're running an oil rig, we're drilling oil wells, whatever it is. And these guys are going 400% faster. And here's how we did it. And they say, is anybody else ready to do that? And then whoever volunteers, then they expand the agile, we call it the agile bubble. They're creating an agile bubble inside the company. They expand that, and then they get another part of the organization is going. And then there's always the next piece of the organization that wants to participate. So they generate this pull so that they're not trying to deal with resistors. They only work with volunteers, and they're just growing and growing that agile piece of the organization. And so, for example, at Schlumberger, where we came in on a global SAP deployment that they'd spent 10 years, $1 billion, and it looked like we were going to spend another 10 years and another $1 billion. They called me up and they said, Jeff, come on in. And after 10 years of delivering nothing, 8 months later, they delivered globally the SAT deployment. So how much faster is that? It's more than 10 times as fast. Okay. And it's because the oil companies are really good at implementing Scrum at scale in this way where they grow that agile bubble and people are pulled into the agile bubble rather than trying to deal with the resistors. Keep them out of the agile implementation.
So I think that's a great point. Let's ask the other question about, again, the agile transformations. As you know, a lot of companies starting their transformations with pilot Scrum teams. And they are trying to add new team. And they are saying we are improving our business agility. So after 1 year or 2 years, the company is always saying, we failed because Scrum is not fitting with us. We have to change our perspective. So in this case, what do you think about this case? Where is the problem?
Okay, so I just gave an example with Rocket Mortgage. I gave you another one with John Deere. These are our two most recent case studies published in the last year. We have many, many more. Both of these companies had been doing SAFe for almost a decade. And it wasn't that SAFe was not working. It actually was a lot better than Waterfall. But from the board of the company, it's not working because their stock price is not increasing. Their competitors are stealing their business. So they're saying we have to do something different. And they implemented Scrum at Scale. And as I said, they changed the structure of the teams. And one of the biggest difference in Scrum at Scale and any other transformation framework is that it has a leadership team doing Scrum called an executive action team, whose responsibility is to fix the problems in the company, to make sure the transformation starts in the right place that's going to maximize revenue delivery, and any problems getting in the way are fixed by management, right? And they run as a Scrum team, and in the best companies, they meet every day and they're working on problems to make the company go faster. Okay, so this is absolutely critical. And let me give you an example why so many fail. In Professor Carter's book on Accelerate, Professor Carter is a leading change guy at Harvard University, and he's written dozens of books. And in the book called Accelerate, he says, I have never seen a successful Agile transformation run by waterfall managers. Now, I've been at many, many conferences over the years, and it's always been similar. I remember the last one I was at where I had 300 people in the room. We were talking about Scrum at Scale. And I said, how many of you in here have waterfall managers leading your Agile transformation? And of the 300 people in the room, 295 of them raised their hands. I said, 295 of you are going to participate in a failed Agile transformation unless you fix this. So for you as Agile leaders, your number one impediment is solving this problem. And you should probably focus totally on this until it's fixed, because you cannot win if you don't do that.
A question about that part, the the waterfall leaders. How can we change their mindset? As you mentioned before, executive meta team. I like that idea. Can we change their mindset with executive meta team, or how can we change their mindset? Or can
Okay,
we
so
change?
here's how we do that at Scrum Inc. Okay, so we come in, a leadership team wants to improve the company. So we send a couple of consultants in for a couple of days to build a backlog of impediments that the company is experiencing. And then that is followed by a senior management workshop for a day. We come into the workshop, our consultants, someone like me comes in, or one of our senior transformation experts. We put up a backlog and sticky notes on the wall of the impediments of the company, the things that are preventing the company from being more successful. And we ask the senior management, do you agree that these are the problems and we have the right priority order? Once we get agreement on that, we say, okay, we're going to describe to you how Scrum to help fix those problems. So we spend an hour or two describing that. And then we ask them, do you want to use Scrum to fix those problems? They usually say yes. I said, well, we want to start with a small set of teams. And we want them to be the teams that work on one of your biggest initiatives. So we actually prioritize the initiatives in the organization. What are the top 10 initiatives in the organization? We want to take a small set of teams and put them against one of your top priority initiatives. Once we have that set, we figured out, we say, now, the way we start is we create an executive action leadership team. These people come from your managers. You may have a scrum master, or a consultant come in to help run it as a scrum. But we need managers who are going to be trained in Agile and running Scrum, driving the improvement in the company, and it needs at least one member of the senior management team on that team. They may be the product owner of the team, but they're participating in the Scrum.
So I think in that point, I think the consultancy is very important. If they want, we start with managers to adapt the new work to them. So I think consultancy is very important area to change their mindset, also way of working, to explain Scrum, because as I see in my experience, a lot of consultancy company directly going with, let's do Scrum, let's create our teams, let's follow our rituals and put our roles with the current roles. So it doesn't work with this way.
The consultancy is important in my view, but I only see it as successful when the consultancy can create that leadership team and training to run as a Scrum, because training the managers in Scrum, if they're not doing Scrum, in my view, doesn't work.
That's a great point. So I want to ask another question about, you mentioned the cross-functional teams. So I want to ask a question about cross-functional teams. And as you know, we are working with complex adaptive systems. So it means we have different type of teams, or we have different type of, for example, procurement team, sales team, marketing team, and they are affecting the company's agility. So what do you think about that part? Maybe we can connect this question with value stream management. If we look at the whole value stream, sometimes we can face different problems. The development team is working great, but procurement team, marketing team, sales team affect their value stream. So what do you think about that?
Even in the days when we were doing mostly software, for example, I started working in 2005 with a venture capital group, Openview Venture Partners. I still work with them. I'm an investor with them today. And we only invest in Agile companies. So trying to get them to work in the way that we want them to work, find very quickly that maybe the developers are not the problem. Maybe it's sales, maybe it's marketing. So our investors who are on the board, they immediately insist we do Scrum in sales or marketing or finance. And we've had some of our greatest successes. In fact, one of the best teams I've ever seen in our, we do large scale startups, late stage, when they already have, they're profitable, they're expanding, expansion stage startups, we call them. So they often have hundreds of people already in the company, and they have a marketing department, finance, they have sales. And we insist we go right into and implement Scrum in marketing. And I have a marketing Scrum in one of my companies that is better than any software development Scrum in any of our portfolio companies. They are absolutely on fire. And they say they can they run circles around their competition. They just tee up all their initiatives They're like little projects, little Scrum projects, and then they just burn them down. So, this is one of the reasons why in 2006 I said we got to get Scrum out of software, because, often the biggest problem is somewhere else in the value chain. Software is just the beginning, right? We need to get the entire organization.
Yeah, that's a great point. Let's focus about again software part, and let's think about it. We want to work with sprints, but our DevOps cycle also, we cannot deliver our product in 2 weeks, in 1 week, or in a month. So our DevOps cycle is very bad. So what do you think about that part? How can we improve our agility in development area with DevOps?
Okay.
Other?
So one of the things you first have to really come to terms with is, we've done a lot of work in the automobile business. So right now we've trained at Tesla, we've trained at BMW, Volkswagen, Scrum is everywhere. But Tesla can implement 20 changes minimum per week in hardware and software on the assembly line as the cars are rolling down the line.
In-life system.
And in a traditional auto company like Ford, they're lucky if they can do one a year. So 20 a week is 1,000 times faster than Ford. What do you think is going to happen to Ford? They're going to lose. If you look at market share in the car business right now, Tesla's increasing, and every other legacy automobile company is down 20, 30, 40, 50%. They're going to go bankrupt. So you have to face the fact that you could not deliver in the old way. You have to deliver 20 new features a week on the automobile assembly line to compete with the leading vendor.
Is it about fasting and also?
Okay. So then you have to look at, well, how do they do that? And right now, General Motors is doing that, and they're starting to imitate Tesla. Okay. Number one, every car gets a complete automated regression test of the car coming down the line. So when it rolls off the end of the line, it takes about 10 hours to get down to the end of the line. When that car rolls off to the end of the line, it's ready to ship. It's already been tested. Second, for every part of the line or every key component for the car, they have multiple teams. So a team can be working on a part in the car that's not being used in the car, but they're working in parallel. And when that new part is ready, within 2 or 3 hours, they can switch that new part onto the line with the team that's been working on it. And the team that was doing that part in the line now is working on the next generation of the part. So every part of the car it's like component-based plug and play. It's like an iPad on wheels is a way to describe it. And we have multiple examples of this. For example, we've worked with the best fighter aircraft people in the world. I used to be a fighter pilot, so I love these people at Saab. They build their fighter aircraft the same way that Tesla builds their cars. Any component can be upgraded in a sprint, and the plane is always flying, right? So people need to change the way they think about and the way they do business so that is radically different. Now, you can't do that all at once, but so you have to set up a plan. I remember when we were working with 3M, we were the global trainers for 3M. And we started with one of their biggest divisions that had, I don't know, 500 or 600 teams. And the first thing we found out was that this whole gigantic system, every component was dependent on every other component. You couldn't change anything without breaking everything else. So in addition to an Agile transformation plan, we had to have an Agile architecture plan. It was 3 years long to start to pull the system apart and create multiple value streams, okay? So what do I think about value streams? Value streams are where the revenue comes from. So your systems are going to probably deliver multiple value streams if you have multiple products or multiple sets of products. And so the teams in those value streams need to be all aligned to drive revenue. But with these 600 teams where everything is tangled up like spaghetti, nobody can see they're driving any revenue. So that means not only is it impossible to upgrade, but nobody feels responsible. So you've got to fix that. So I know for a lot of you listening to this podcast, you have companies that have all this legacy, if it's software, legacy code, if it's hardware, legacy systems. In the car business, they're all, one of the things they're saying, oh, the reason our sales are down 20% is supply chain. Okay, so let's look at what the supply chain problem is. The supply chain problem is that Ford, BMW, Mercedes, the others, they're using chips in their car from third-party vendor components that were built in the 1950s. No chip manufacturer wants to build those chips anymore. So they can't get chips. So is that a supply chain problem or is that an Agile problem? I submit it's an Agile problem because as soon as Tesla had this problem, they immediately started ordering new chips. They ordered them from 15 different vendors, and within 2 weeks, they had written the software to put the chips in the cars on the assembly line. And so Tesla has no supply chain problem. So in many cases, if not most cases, the supply chain crisis of Agile leadership. And Agile, the crisis in Agile leadership prevents delivery. And so the primary thing that Agile consultancies need to be focused on is delivering better product faster and responding to impediments that arise, like the chips are obsolete. And lining everybody up in a value stream so that one value stream has minimal dependencies on other value streams so that you can upgrade certain products or pieces of products very fast, every sprint, if not more often.
Yeah, I think that's are great points also about value streams. In that area, I want to ask a question about dependencies. Also the team dependencies. So if we create cross-functional team, as you said, if our company is huge employers, so we have to manage their dependencies, also very stream dependencies, product dependencies. What's your recommends about that whole dependencies?
Well, obviously you want to minimize dependencies, but some of the dependencies are on the talent of on the teams, right? If the team is cross-functional enough, they can fix anything. So one of the most interesting examples was a big consultancy in Belgium that I worked with that had over 3,000 consultants. And they decided that anytime a team had a dependency on certain technologies or certain skill sets of developers, they would have a person with that skill go into the team for 1 or 2 sprints. And the primary goal of the team was to drain the brain dry of the expert. So the mission of the team was to remove that dependency of knowledge and skill within 1 or 2 sprints, anytime they ran into it. And I was CTO of actually one of the fastest sets of teams I've ever seen. Was a company called Patient Keeper. CTO for that company for 8 years. And one of the things that the teams all found out is that they were dependent on updating. We were using Oracle, mainly Oracle database systems for big hospitals, right? And so anytime we had an update in an Oracle database, we had to have a database expert. And that slowed things way down. We only had very few highly skilled Oracle database gurus, right? And so every team learned how to do 80% of what the database guru could do. And that allowed them to make any changes needed in a sprint. And the database gurus only needed to do tuning of the systems in the hospitals on a periodic basis, maybe every 6 months, to make sure they ran fast. So the teams intentionally took away the impediment. And that's the way teams need to work. And if you don't work that way, you're going to be like the automobile manufacturers, where car sales are going down 10 or 20% every other month, right? And that's going to be bad for business. And business is going to start laying people off. And so what Agile people need to understand is what we're talking about is not nice to have. What we're talking about is absolutely essential for you to have a job next year.
I think that's a great answer. And also we have a lot of questions in our chat area, but we have 10 minutes, so I want to ask some of them. Okay. So I think you mentioned before this question, but maybe to be more clear, we can answer that questions. What are the critical difference between SAFe and Scrum Scale? And I'm taking this question always. Is SAFe really agile? What do you think about that question?
Well, SAFe is certainly more agile than waterfall. So in the Rocket Mortgage case, they had 22,000 people, I think 26 release trains initially. They grew to 40,000 people, 41 release trains, and they were delivering twice as fast with. But unfortunately, that wasn't fast enough. Their competition is going faster. So they had to look at what was missing in SAFe to take the next step and leap in performance. And what was missing was there were 4 things. You can read the paper, the Rocket Mortgage paper. The first thing they did was the Scrum teams. I've already described that. Get cross-functional teams, 3 roles, Scrum Masters that can improve teams, product owners that can deliver revenue. Second, they changed all the SAFe meetings because the SAFe meetings were not focused on delivery. They said, we need to go from delivering every quarter to delivering every day. Any meeting we have That is the primary focus of discussion. And we want only people in those meetings that can actually implement that. So the only people that went to meetings were DevOps people that were going to make things deliver every day instead of every 3 months, right? So all these meetings, this big loom planning, you do need every quarter, get all the product owners together, make sure everything's prioritized right. But all that stuff, you can't do big group planning when you're delivering every day, right? That doesn't work. So all the meetings had to be changed. Third, they were lucky because the executive action team, the senior technical managers, were trained by me to be Scrum at Scale trainers. So now we have managers who are the executive action team who are Scrum guys. and they don't tolerate teams that cannot run effective Scrum, right? They know what it is. They know what it looks like. And they know what people they need to have on the teams. And they're not talking about what if we do if people don't want to do Scrum. They're removing people from teams that aren't effectively implementing Scrum, whether they want to or not, because they're Agile leaders. Okay. And the other major difference in SAFe is an IT framework. So are all the other scaling frameworks, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the John Deere study, you'll say, okay, it isn't about IT. IT is doing SAFe. They're not very fast, but we're not going to worry about them for a while because right now our problem is supply chain management. We need to have all those purchasing people, the contracting people running Scrum, the delivery people running Scrum. And the velocity of improvement in the supply chain functions went up 1,000%, 10 times faster improvement in supply chain than what was going on over in IT. And that enabled them to deliver 15 times as many tractors during COVID. And the stock price went up 400%. This is what Scrum at Scale is designed to do, to get everything aligned, to get the management doing Scrum, and to target the point in the value stream where the blockage is, right?
I have a question about the executive meta team. Do you want to give some tips about the executive meta team, because I'm one of that team?
So one of the biggest problems that companies have is getting strong product ownership. So let's take Apple. When Steve Jobs came back into Apple, they brought him back because the company was failing. And the first thing he did, he looked at the company and said, you have too many products. You have dozens and dozens of products. We're going to kill all products except for 4 product lines. Steve Jobs stepped in as chief product owner. And because he was a CEO, there was no manager who could mess with his product backlog, right? So we need in an Agile organization a way for the chief product owner to get the managers agreeing, supporting, and executing the chief product owner's backlog. So another significant difference between Scrum at Scale and all the other IT Agile frameworks is that we have a chief product owner meeting with managers at least every sprint, if not more often, and getting the managers to agree, align, and commit to support the chief product owner's backlog. So that is a forum for negotiation with the management team to get the whole company focused. And it's an attempt to, where you don't have a Steve Jobs, you do the best you can with a good chief product owner and a management team that will support the product owner.
So we have 3 or 4 minutes. Before I ask my last question, I want to summarize the topics, and you can add new topics to me. We discuss about business agility after the agile world change. Scrumming and Scrum Scale is focusing business agility and not project based, also the product and service based. And we discuss about executive method teams. If we have traditional or waterfall mindset in our top management, we have to change. We have to create executive method teams to change their mindset. And to change management, I take my notes, accelerate, also the leading change books. And you shared your experience about how to change safe to Scrum Scale, about product owner roles, Scrum Master roles. My last question is, and also I know a lot of questions is coming from the chat area, but we don't have much more time to answer all of them. But I want to say thank you to our attendees. I will try to collect whole questions. If I had a chance to answer them in offline, I would try to answer. And if you have maybe we can discuss later, Jeff. If you have time, maybe in offline we can answer that questions.
Yeah, send me all the questions and I'll see.
That's very great. Also,
Take a look at them.
Thank you for that. So I write my personal questions also in that list. So my last question is about what are your suggestions to Scrum Masters, companies, product owners, Agile leaders? Can you share 4 or 5 different suggestions for companies or the other roles?
Okay, so 4 suggestions.
Okay, I'm taking my notes.
Number 1, success depends on mindset. So the first thing you have to have is a mindset that resistance to change is your primary problem, and I have to have a strategy to deal with that. And since I come out of a military background, I studied all the great military leaders. One of the best people for this is Sun Tzu, a great Chinese general, because he was able to win a war without firing a shot. So how can you win without firing anybody? That's number 1 suggestion. You have to have a plan and you have to take responsibility. I don't want people asking or complaining, people don't want to do Scrum. Oh, it's so hard. No, as an Agile leader, your job is to fix that. Number 2, you need to have a short-term and a long-term plan and be executing on that. And every step of the short-term plan has to add up to the long-term plan. This is the way of 2 swords taught by Miyamoto Musashi, the greatest swordsman ever in Japan. That is because if you can't deliver your sprint goals, a product increment sprint goal, every sprint that adds up to a large product goal that's going to generate large amounts of revenue for your company is not going to be successful. And one of the biggest points of failure is being overwhelmed by the short-term problems. You take your eye off the long-term strategy. So again, this is a mindset problem. And both the product owners and the Scrum Master need to have, but the product owners need to have this. Product owners need to be good at saying, no, we're not going to do that. No, we're not going to do that pet project. We're only going to do what is going to drive revenue this year. And I have my prioritized list and we are going to execute on it, right? That's 2. 3, Scrum is implemented, or the pieces of Scrum are designed to deal with complex systems. And anytime you try to change a system, you get side effects. Things never work as planned, right?
Exactly.
And so you need to be able to, and when things don't work at plan, I remember at 3M, they said, Sutherland, we don't know how you're going to change this company because the company is built on the 2-finger salute. Something bad happened and they did it. So this is traditional project management. Oh, we're late because of them. That's why we're late. So a good product owner, a good Scrum Master, a good team need to cut through this. No, it's not because they did it. It's because this list of impediments, and this is the most important impediment, and we're going to take it away today. So like total cutting through the nonsense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when things go wrong, you get a lot of, background communication, whispering in the hallways, rumors, motivation goes down. And so again, the product owners, the Scrum Masters, if you really run a good Scrum team, you create an Agile bubble that protects you from this, right? I've seen that a lot in big companies. I remember in Yahoo, every place we had Scrum, they had thousands of teams. Every place we had Scrum was a little bubble of happiness. Even when Yahoo was failing and not meeting their objectives, and everybody was depressed, the really good Scrum was a bubble of happiness that stayed focused, right? So creating that environment is number 3. And number 4 is embedded in Scrum is the OODA loop of Colonel John Boyd, the world's greatest fighter pilot. I was trained in that as a fighter pilot. I was trained in those strategies. They're taught in all the war colleges in the United States. It is the primary strategy for the U.S. Marines. And our mentor, Professor Nanaka, who wrote the first paper on Scrum in the Harvard Business Review in 1996, the new product development game, is writing a book on the U.S. Marines. And he says today, the OODA loop is more important than the PDCA cycle for Toyota today. Because the PDCA cycle, and again, Scrum has that built into it, that's part of Lean, builds efficiency, but you can only be successful today if you innovate faster. And innovation comes from the OODA loop. And everyone in the Scrum organization needs to understand how to do what John Boyd's talking about. So you try to implement something, you try to remove this impediment, you try to change the organization, and now you're getting resistance. So what John says, the O in OODA loop is observe. Once you see what's going on, you need to orient yourself differently, come in at a different angle that disrupts that resistance. Then people will be confused. A similar example of that is in one of our venture companies. We had a Scrum team where guys complaining about the Scrum Master all the time. So they're not doing very well. So they invite me to the retrospective. Listen to this guy complain about the Scrum Master. So I see the resistance. This guy's a problem. So I come at it at a different angle. I say to him, let's change the Scrum Master. How about that? And he says, yeah, that would be a really good idea because this Scrum Master is really a bad Scrum Master. So we decided who the Scrum Master be. We come to the next retrospective. This guy is complaining about the new Master. But the whole team now says, clearly the Scrum Master just isn't the problem. We got a different Scrum Master. You are the problem. And this guy was the founder of the company. So I went to the CEO of the company and I told him what was happening. And the CEO came in and pulled that founder off the team. Said, I'm not going to let you screw up the team because you have a problem with Scrum Masters. It's just not going to be the way it's going to work around here. So that was an example of an OODA loop, right? I did something different that confused the resistance that allowed me to come around and take out the resistance. Do you see how this is like flying a fighter aircraft? It's like aerial combat. So this OODA loop way of thinking is important for running a team. For a product, is really important for the product, okay? Mm-hmm. Competition is coming up with this new feature. You have to do something that's going to counteract that quickly. So at every layer of the organization, at the highest level, Agile means you're constantly, everyone, team member, Scrum Master, product owner, managers, they're executing OODA loops. Mm-hmm. So that would be the fourth suggestion. And if you could do those four, you're probably going to be successful.
I think that's our great points. Also, the suggestions is great. Also, the whole part is great for me. I take a lot of thank you in our chat area. And I want to say thank you, Jeff, to accept my invitation, to share your knowledge. And if you have the last comments, or we can take them, and then after that we can close this session.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me. I was in Turkey a few years ago. My son is actually in Turkey this month. He's a mathematician talking at mathematical conferences in Turkey. And so and we have a very large customer in Turkey. One of the biggest companies in Turkey works with Scrum Inc. And so we're always interested in helping you have great companies, great products, and have great success. So that's my hope for you.
Thank you. And I want to say thank you to our attendees. We have a lot of attendees, and I will take whole questions and we'll send you, and much appreciate to answer them. So let's close this session. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, our attendees. Let's see you in next session. Have a good day. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.